187,000 Americans filed for first-time unemployment benefits just last week. And I know that you said that was a dip from the previous week, but this is anything but an improvement because you look what this has been going on for 41 weeks. We've been getting these really jaw-dropping numbers, and it's easy to become desensitized to them. But I say don't, because any one of these weekly numbers would really blow away what we used to get pre-pandemic. Before the pandemic, the unemployment numbers were, let's say, around 200,000 per week. So in addition to the regular jobless claim number, that 787,000, we also had 308,000 people filed for first-time unemployment benefits under the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. This is for people who are gig workers, who are self-employed, who aren't eligible for state aid otherwise. So you add those two numbers together, so the actual number of people filing for just last week, John, is over 1 million people. 19.5 million Americans in this country are currently getting some sort of jobless benefit. And then you go ahead and look at what the stock market's doing, and it's like an alternate universe. It's why I tell you that the stock market really is not the economy. It does not reflect what's going on Main Street in the real economy. Stocks are trading at or near record highs on this last trading day of 2020. Pretty much near where they were at the beginning of the pandemic. And you look at all the three major indices, John, they're going to end the year with gains, of course, barring anything crazy happening in the last hour of the trading day. The Dow will end up 6% higher, the S&P 15% higher for the year, and the NASDAQ up about 43% for the year.
A gap between Wall Street and Main Street, the big story. Alison Kosik, thank you very much, and Happy New Year.
Yeah. Happy New Year.
All right. The latest jobless claims are just one example of the hardships many Americans faced this year. The coronavirus pandemic triggered the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. CNN's Christine Romans reflected on how the U.S. fared through the tough financial times of 2020.
2020, a year like no other for business. The pandemic touched every part of the economy, altering the way Americans live, work, and shop. Historic job losses prompted unprecedented stimulus. But as benefits dwindled, Americans suffered. And while a few companies thrived, some may never recover. This year, the pandemic triggered the worst job loss in U.S. history. 22 million jobs vanished in just 2 months, wiping out a decade of gains.
The largest single month of job losses since the Great Depression.
The worst jobs report in American history.
Nearly every sector shed workers during the spring lockdowns. The U.S. still hasn't recovered all those jobs, and hiring is now slowing again.
Thank you all.
Historic losses prompt a historic response.
The motion is adopted.
The government passing an unheard of $2 trillion relief package back in March.
This is the largest aid package in history.
The government enhanced unemployment benefits, funded stimulus checks for families, and loans for hard-hit industries. But there was a catch. All measures had expiration dates. Small businesses said PPP loans ran out fast, if they managed to secure one at all.
The first round sent tens of millions of dollars to bigger, publicly traded companies like Potbelly, Ruth's Chris, and Shake Shack.
All three later returned the money. As unemployment aid expired, Americans lined up at food banks in record numbers.
They used to feed about 50,000 families a month. Now it's over 100,000 a month.
And eviction moratoriums without rent forgiveness became a ticking time bomb.
Evictions are about to skyrocket.
200 eviction orders have come through the Harris County courts for this week.
Experts warned for months that more stimulus was needed, but congressional gridlock kept a new deal in limbo. Meanwhile, that economic pain stalled growth.
The second quarter was the worst quarter in terms of GDP action in America's history.
And even with a record summer bounce back,
we're still not back to levels that we were at before the COVID crisis hit.
The pandemic essentially froze the economy. Americans largely stopped eating in restaurants, attending movies, live events, and traveling, leading to some big losses.
2 airlines, American and United, announced that they're laying off a combined 32,000 employees.
Marriott says that the financial impact of this pandemic is worse than 9/11 and the 2008 financial crisis combined.
Homebound Americans fueled an online shopping spree, helping behemoths like Amazon while devastating brick and mortar.
J.Crew becomes the first major retailer to file for bankruptcy protections as a result of the outbreaks.
Lord & Taylor, the nation's first department store, filed for Chapter 11. As the country lived, worked, and attended school online, sales exploded for companies like Zoom, Peloton, and Nintendo, and a new breed of essential worker.
As millions stay home, millions are out risking exposure to the virus on the front lines.
Delivery employees helped keep the economy afloat in 2020. Amid the pandemic, the death of George Floyd in police custody in May sparked protests over racial justice and a racial reckoning for corporate America. Companies pledged to address diversity in their hiring, and some recognized the Juneteenth holiday. Major retailers promised to better support black businesses, while others retired problematic logos.
The Aunt Jemima brand will retire the image, acknowledging its racist past.
Minority and low-wage workers also bore the brunt of job and income loss this year. Meanwhile, the stock market thrived. There was a big plunge in March.
Trading has stopped because we've seen a drop of 7%.
Ending in a bear market. But stocks rebounded quickly to record highs, buoyed by government stimulus, explosive rallies in stay-at-home stocks and big tech, and the Federal Reserve.
The Fed's bought up trillions of dollars in securities, pumping new money into the economy.
This is the historic disconnect of 2020, the so-called K-shaped recovery. Main Street suffers, but Wall Street gains by betting on the future that vaccines and more stimulus will trigger a rebound. Can the economy turn around in 2021? After a year of historic losses, next year can only be better, but it may be a dark winter before we get there.
All right, we've got new details about the inaugural